Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Save the Punter betting podcast. I'm your host, Parris Barron. We're doing it as an audio and visual for the first time ever today. So for first-time listeners or viewers who don't know the format, Save the Punter's a group of bettors that have been going since 2016. We try and research all the angles and do the hard work so you don't have to, and offer you opinions on where we think there's value. As ever, if you're tailing us, if you're following our bets, please do so responsibly. Only bet what you can afford to lose. We'd really welcome your feedback after you listening. It's the first time we've done it in this format. I'm joined by regular guest Pete, who's in Austria as usual. Hello, Pete.
All right, good to be back. Looking forward to it.
And we've got Tom Love making his debut. Hello, Tom.
Hi, mate. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thanks. Very well, thanks. So Tom, to those of you who don't know Tom, he's someone I've been following on Twitter for a while and been pretty impressed with the way he looks into his bets. I've done a couple of podcasts with him elsewhere, so I thought we'd get him on. And obviously, you guys have probably never seen Pete before, but you know him from years of Austrian football bets. Hopefully, some of you guys have been on some of them. We've got a very packed agenda. So I think we'll get cracking. Maybe we'll start with betting lowlights. Pete, what was your betting lowlight from the week?
Had to be Wolverhampton Wanderers, I think, against Arsenal. I thought they could really put a marker down, get a win, get close to that top four challenge. But I didn't watch the game, but even looking at the stats, looked like Arsenal probably the better side, which was a surprise to me. So that was a disappointment.
What about you, Tom?
Exactly the same. I was keen on Wolves. I had them to score in the second half. Really disappointed with them, to be honest. I've been against Arsenal a lot this season, and it's usually paid the bills, but not this time, unfortunately.
Well, hopefully you've got a nap for later to help the listeners pay the bills.
Oh, yeah.
Although, don't be using your bill money for betting, please. Well, what about your highlights, Pete? What about you?
Probably that game from last night, Amstetten versus FAC Wien, under 2.5. It looked a bit dodgy. Something that didn't look right after you were tweeting about 15, 20 minutes in. The price was still the same. There was penalties all over the shop. I was thinking maybe something was going to go wrong, but they snuck in with the 1-1 unders, and that's all good.
Oh, yeah, I can't believe this. So for those of you who don't know, we had under 2.5 in the Amstetten game, and the price had drifted about 20 ticks throughout the day. So I've gone in again a little bit, just topped up a little bit. And after the game kicked off, the price was actually larger than before the game, which is crazy given it was 10 minutes in and there hadn't been a goal yet. And then, fortunately enough for us, there wasn't a goal till the 75th minute. But then there was another goal in the...
Yeah, I started to get worried.
Yeah, I had to go for a walk. I was walking up and down Balham High Street, just refreshing the score every 2 minutes. What about you, Tom? A betting highlight from the weekend?
Yeah, on Sunday I was very keen on Sheffield Wednesday on the corners. Backed them on the corner handicap +2 at evens. Was an absolute steal, absolute given. We're quite large on that, and I backed them 5 or more, 6 or more, 7 or more, and 8 or more, which all came in. They ended up with 8. So yeah, cashed in that game, to be honest. One to follow for Sheffield Wednesday games to come, I think that.
Nice. Yeah, I think Gary Monk does set his team up to win corners. Mm. So from last week's betting highlights to this week, maybe we'll start with you, Pete. What's your strongest bet?
My strongest bet for this round of games is going to be Arsenal versus Leicester. I'm looking at Leicester to win. Current best price, you can get 3.3 on the marathon and exchanges. And I really like Leicester here. There seems to be sort of narrative going around that Leicester, they're really struggling at the moment. They run out of steam. They're not really going to get there to the top 4. And I disagree with that. I think maybe a bit too much was made over those first 2 games came back after the restart, where they didn't look very good, especially in attack. And people are sort of getting a bit carried away, I feel. Because they're still solid at the back and their underlying numbers are good. I was looking at their last 10 games. All their shot ratios are actually better than the full season. I think the thing I think you mentioned it before on the last podcast about how they've overachieved, or maybe in one of your write-ups, because they did overperform at the beginning of the season, just scoring an unsustainable number of chances, which has regressed, as you'd expect, but they're still a very solid team underneath there. Even though Arsenal did well last week against Wolves, we know they can come out with these good performances, but it's consistency. Can they keep doing it consistency? And in the matchup of the way teams play, I like the way Leicester play to be able to exploit the way Arsenal play. You look at the pace they got with Vardy, Barnes, Albrighton, if he plays, they're going to be dangerous on the counter. And if Chilwell and Maddison look like they're going to be out, if they were playing, I'd be looking at quite a big bet here. But because Arsenal, the last 10 matches, no real improvement that I can see. I've got them 9th in the league over the whole season. I looked at their stats just in 2020. It's a tiny improvement, but they've got really unsustainable shooting and save percentages. And now with Leno's gone out, is this keeper? He looks okay. Is he going to keep that up? Shooting percentages, we know over small samples can do crazy things. So I'm not sure they're particularly improved. So at 3.3, I really like Leicester here.
Yeah, I think when you say Arsenal 9th in your league table over the season, what you mean is based on your performance data. Obviously, they're up to 7th. They're on 49 points. They're 3 points behind Wolves. And if you look at the season, Arsenal have been much criticised, whereas Wolves have received a lot of plaudits. And there's not that much difference. So what you're saying is, even though recent Arsenal results have been good, you're saying that because of the performance data, you doubt they can keep that up.
Well, I just think, it's not, the performances haven't quite been as good as the results, I think. Whereas Leicester, probably the opposite is true. So I think this is where you get sort of a good bit of value. You can find value when those two things meet.
And will it be just a 1 point bet for you?
It will be. Because, as I said, Maddison, he probably won't start. I think he might be in the squad. Chilwell looks out. If those two are in, I'd be thinking big on Leicester here. But I think 1 point at 3.3 for now is fine with those two injuries.
Yeah, if you look at some of the expected goal data, I think Leicester have got almost a plus 15 in expected goals, where Arsenal are a minus their expected goal difference. So that would suggest, for those that like following expected goals, where teams have had shots from what positions, the quality of chances they're creating, it suggests that Leicester are a much better team. There's a 9-point difference in the league. Leicester have scored 63 goals this season to Arsenal's 49. They've also only conceded 31 compared to Arsenal conceding 41. So the expected goal ratios are converting into actual goal ratios to an extent. Tom, did you have an opinion on this one either way?
Not as strong as Pete, to be honest. It's just because Arsenal have had a bit of an upturn the last 4 games in all competitions they've won. I think they've scored 10, conceded just the 1. So they're looking a bit more tight now they've gone to this formation. And I do get where Pete's coming from, where I think Leicester can get at that defence. But if they are playing with 3 centre-halves really again, I do think it'll make it a little bit tighter. I was glad to see Iheanacho come in for Leicester. I think he just gives them more of a goal threat in that 6-yard box, especially. He'll be a big player next season, I think, for them as well, especially if they're going to have Champions League games too. So, yeah, I think at the prices, I would say that Leicester are the value, because I do also rate them better than Arsenal. I've been against Arsenal all season, and it's not much of a sample size, 4 games in a row. So, yeah, I couldn't put you off that, but personally, I'm going to leave this one alone.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, I think Iheanacho, I like him better against the lower teams where they sort of sit deep. He's more intelligent player, sees a picture of the game. Whereas in this game, maybe I'd bring him on from the bench, and I think this could be a Vardy game. That's what I've got in my head, but let's see how it goes.
Yeah, I think when I priced it, I had Leicester at 3.05. So to get 20 ticks more is pleasing, but I'd want to see if Maddison was starting. Chilwell's important too, but Maddison a bit more for me. So Pete's gone 1 point on Leicester to win at 3.25. I'm going to take a look at the Brighton-Liverpool game. I always do my own prices for all the Premier League games and then compare them with the bookmaker and to see where the biggest difference is. And the biggest difference came at the Amex, where I had Brighton 5.26. You can get 6.5, so that's more than a whole extra point. And these sort of differentials are common, especially for underdogs, because money will tend to come in for the favourites and contract their price, which makes the price on the underdog drift. That being said, with it still being a few days from the game, that's probably not the case here. It's just a difference in opinion between where the line is in the market and my line here. I also have the draw as a bit of value because I had, I think I had 10-3 on the draw, and the draw's quite a touch shorter than that in this game. So, yeah, sorry, I had the draw at under 2-1, but it's actually 10-3. So either I've priced up something very wrong, or there's a play to be had on getting Brighton on side here. But then the thing is, my heart kind of isn't particularly keen on Brighton as a team. So I wanted to see if the data supported the pricing and whether it was actually worth getting Brighton on side. The Asian line's about even money for Brighton plus a goal. So if they lose by 1, it's a void, and a draw or win for Brighton, and you're almost doubling your money. This season, Brighton have won or drawn in 20 out of 33 games. Out of their 13 losses, they've lost by more than 1 goal 7 times. So if you'd bet this every week, you'd have lost seven times, 6 voids. The other 20, you would have got your money back and more. So it'd probably make more sense to look at the results against the teams in the top 6, because Liverpool are undoubtedly in that echelon in the Premier League. And in those 10 games, Brighton have scored only 5 and conceded 19. 5 of those 10 have involved a defeat of more than 1 goal. No victories at all. 4 draws and 1 defeat by exactly 1 goal, which was incidentally in the reverse against Liverpool. And if we look at Liverpool's results against the bottom half teams, which is essentially what Brighton are, they're 15th in the league. Liverpool have played 18, they've scored 41 and conceded only 14. So if you average that out, they're getting about 2.3 goals per game and conceding less than 1, 0.7 goals per game. And in half these games, they've won by more than 1 goal. So if you had the probability of Brighton losing by less than 1 and Brighton losing by more than 1 and Liverpool winning by more than 1, it's kind of saying pretty much even money on Brighton plus 1.5. So to be only getting even money on Brighton plus 1, it's not good value at all. And actually, it points to the fact that Liverpool minus 1 is probably the value on the Asian handicap, because Liverpool minus 1 is 1.97. And it's very rare that you're going to get that sort of price on Liverpool to win by more than 1 goal. Obviously, if they win by exactly 1, it's a void bet. But the other variable we've got to look at is motivation. And I think motivation plays heavily in these prices. Liverpool have already won the league. Since doing so, they've been put away by Man City. They looked incredibly laboured against a poor Villa side. They won 2-0 late on. Trent has been shocking since the restart. Robertson, Gomez, Van Dijk, they've not been great. Sometimes Liverpool's front three look like they don't work in tandem, and other times they look made for each other. It's kind of really up and down, but there doesn't seem the same sense of urgency to score, and I think that was backed up by the fact there was only 6 attempts on goal against Villa, which is well below their average of 15. So even though the value is on the Asian line probably with Liverpool, I'm kind of put off backing them because of the motivation. So I was trying to see what other angles I could use all this evidence to support another angle. And given Brighton aren't required to come out and go for the win because they're all but mathematically safe, they can kind of sit back and be patient. Liverpool probably struggle against teams that sit back and are kind of very patient. They prefer going to aggressively press teams. So I was thinking it could be a little boring, a little turgid to start with. So one bet I do like is 0-0 at half time. That's 3.4 with Betfred. Like I said, Liverpool are champions, Brighton are virtually safe. Neither team has to get goals. And actually, if you look at the last 10 games, 4 of them have been 0-0 at half time for Brighton out the last 10. And 5 of Liverpool's last 10 have been 0-0 at half time. So to get 3.4, that's a price I really like. Don't know if you lads had any thoughts on that one.
Yeah, I think that if you'd have backed Liverpool to win by exactly 1 goal this season, especially on the road, you'd have made a hell of a lot of 3-1 in these kind of games. And that's where, if you were going to get Brighton on side and you're seeing that Liverpool performance, quite pedestrian, quite dour, really, I think you want to be taking Brighton +1 on the Asian handicap just to give yourself some insurance if you are that way inclined. I personally would rather I'd go for a smaller stake and back Liverpool to win by exactly 1 goal. I think it's something that's happened 14 times this season, which is remarkable, really. And that's why I think when you're looking at bookies pricing up for next season, Liverpool aren't the favourites because they are winning by a slim margin in a lot of these games. The data kind of backs up that Man City have been much better in that regard as well. So if I was taking a bet here personally, Parris, I'd be looking at a smaller stake on Liverpool to win by exactly 1 goal. Not sure what price. You'd probably get about 3.5, something like that. I think that'll be a good thing.
What about you, Pete?
Yeah, after watching that game yesterday, I expect quite a few changes to be made to the Liverpool team. And I think there'll be a bit of both. So there'll be some players coming in, younger players who really want to impress, but then that would affect the cohesion. I think we saw even with Origi up front, I think that's what there was no real linkage between him and Mane and Salah. So I think maybe, I found it a difficult one to really evaluate, but maybe the unders, certainly first half, is something I'd probably be in favour of at that price. It seems quite good. Other than that, I'd probably be sort of leaving it alone, just see how it goes. Because I feel Liverpool, I'm not sure how they're going to come out. I think they're still going to try hard, but because they're going to be changing a lot of the team now, it's going to be difficult to judge.
Yeah, I think on the unders, I'm also backing under 1 Asian goal in the first half, which is 2.17 with Marathon. So if there's only 1 goal, you get your money back. If it's 0-0, you more than double your money. I also like under 1.5 Asian first half goals. Sorry, under 1.25 first half Asian goals, which is 1.73 with Bet365. So I'm basically going to split 2 points between the 0-0 at half time and the 2 underplays on the Asian handicap. By the sounds of it, 0-0 at half time isn't something Tom is particularly interested in. I think I just had a quick look at the price. Liverpool to win by 1 goal. You can get 3.6 with Bet365. So
almost exactly what he said.
Yeah, not a bad price there. So it sounds like we've got a little bit of support for the Leicester win, less support for the 0-0 at half time on the Liverpool-Brighton game. Maybe, Tom, you can be the one that gets us a lot of support with your strongest Premier League bet.
Well, let's hope so. I'm going to go for Chelsea. They're away at Palace, and they're a little bit short for me personally to back outright. I think they're about 1.5, something like that. But I'm happy to take Chelsea to win and under 4.5 goals. You can get 1.77 with Betway. And I just think I've been against Palace all season, to be honest, and they have stung me quite a bit just because they are outperforming the data quite often. They're nicking wins here, they're nicking draws here and there as well. But I think against the better teams, and especially now they've got nothing to play for, they look like they've upped sticks, and they were really disappointing at Leicester watching that. And they didn't even try a leg, especially going forward. They've just got nothing. And I do like a relatively low amount of goals in this game, but I just think Chelsea have the quality to win, basically, here. I mean, if you look at Chelsea since the restart, 4 wins and that 1 loss, were really impressive against Man City. I thought they look to me like a team that they know that Ziyech's coming in, they know that Werner's coming in, and they're upping the ante. They're playing a much better, even though there's not an awful lot going on for them. They should get top 4, but they're playing like the futures depend on it, I think, and they've been really impressive. And yeah, it's just as much as an anti-Palace bet as it is a pro-Chelsea bet. This, I think Selhurst Park's in the least amount of goals in the Premier League. It's no surprise under Hodgson. They sit quite deep, but Chelsea have so many different players who can play in different kind of games. I mean, Giroud's great with his back to goal as well, linking up player. And yeah, well, whoever they go with here, I just think they'll have too much. 1.5, something like that on the straight win is fine by me, but I want a bit more, and I'm not expecting too many goals. So Chelsea to win an under 4.5. About 1.77 with Betway last time I checked. I think that might even come in a bit more. The expected goals ratings that I see have Palace around 15th. They're now in 14th place. It was only a couple of weeks ago people were talking about them possibly getting Europa League. So you can see how fine these margins are in the middle third, especially. You can kind of get carried away with a team, and then the next week they're down there and it doesn't look all that good. And for me, Palace are on the beach. Zaha's probably thinking about a move away. I know it's something we've mentioned before. And yeah, they'll have too much for them here. I'm very confident on this. So Chelsea to win an under 4.5 goals is my nap at 1.77.
Yeah, I think I'm just having a look now. It's 1.75 at the moment as we record with Betway and Coral. So it's good that we got another book there that's open. Sky Bet just behind at 1.73. I'm sure our listeners will be able to do some sort of bet builder somewhere to come up with an even better price. Hopefully you can let us know.
Yeah.
The one thing I'd be worried about here is I think this has happened 12 or 13 times this season in Chelsea's 33 games. So that would imply odds of 2.78 you'd want, given the strike rate. But of course, there's so much else at play here because we're talking about a team, as you said, that know they've got better players coming in next season. There's been a spike in their performances. Palace have got nothing to play for. Chelsea are the much stronger team. Pete, did you have an opinion on this one?
Well, I think talking about what Palace have got nothing to play for, I think that's big because without the crowd, if there was a crowd in, big London derby, I think we were talking about a different game. The only issue I think you have for Chelsea is the set pieces. So I expect Zuma to play. Chelsea seem a lot more under control, certainly from corners when he plays. So that's going to be the main way in for Palace. And if they can avoid that, I think, I had unders, odds, under 2.5, odds on Chelsea. Yeah, I mean, it's not my sort of favourite market to go into, as you know. But, I expect more often than not this bet would happen,
Yeah, I'm not against it at all by any means. But, it's not something I'd typically combine. Just to kind of get 1.75 probably seems about the right price. What else did you have, Tom? I know you looked at a couple of other games. What was it goals you fancied in Sheffield United Wolves?
Not necessarily goals, no. I actually think that there might be a relatively low amount of goals in this given the penchant of these two teams. It's more of a price play this for me, and it's Sheffield United to be leading at half-time, which is 19-5 with BetVictor. I don't know if you could kind of argue against this for me, but why are Wolves 19-10 to be leading at half-time?
Yeah, when they're bottom of the league at half-time.
Bottom of the league at half-time. They've won five first halves all season, 5. They've lost 16. So why are Sheffield United double the price in this market? Doesn't make sense to me at all. So it's more of a price play than anything. Initially, I was looking at the draw at half-time just because I could see a low amount of goals, but that price has just taken it to a new level for me. Wolves were disappointing, as we mentioned, against Arsenal. And if you look at Sheffield United, they're 10th in the first half table, so pretty decent. And I don't think there's too much between these sides. I do rate Wolves slightly better on all the metrics, but they were disappointing, and I'm not sure. It might be a bit too early to say, but they have got a relatively small squad, and this kind of quick turnaround could be hurting them a little bit, perhaps. But yeah, I mean, it's purely a price play. I was shocked that they were that price. I'd have it the other way around. I'd have Sheffield United at around 2-1 to be leading at half time, and Wolves more like a 19-5 shot. So that's just something that took me. So I'd probably have about half a point on that, to be honest, just because I don't think they're going to come about that often, these kind of bets, because Sheffield United looked really good, I thought, against Spurs. I backed them plus a half, very strong on that, which flew in the end. I think they went off around 2.07, plus a half a goal at home against Spurs. And I did expect them to win that, and they're at home again here. Sander Berge really impressed me after a pretty tricky start for him. I haven't been impressed, but what I saw of him in that game, he was really good.
Yeah, after you calling him toilet on Twitter, he went on one man of the match, didn't he?
Exactly. I think it was a 40-1 shot.
Yeah.
So I should do that more often. I'll diss him again this week, and hopefully Sheffield United can get the lead at half time. Maybe he can pop up with a goal. But he is a threat. I mean, he has been getting in the box quite a bit as well. It was interesting to see them go with kind of three defensive-looking midfielders in that game against Spurs, but they still managed to create a decent amount, and they are a threat from set pieces as well. So yeah, it's purely a price play for me. I'd happily lay Wolves to be winning at half time at 19-10. That's for sure, and don't see any reason why. It's happened in half the games this season for Wolves. They've been losing at half time, and 19-5 is a silly price.
Yeah, okay. No, it does sound like a bit of value there. The only worry would be goals in the Sheffield United team, but at the end of the day, it's priced at 4.75, so it's built into the price. Yeah. It's a little bit of a long shot, but it's something that you might want to get on side when you're thinking about how bad Wolves are at half time. Like we said, they're bottom of the league at half time. Pete, did you have anything in this game or potentially another game you looked at?
I don't really look too much at the half markets, but I do think Wolves are too short for the 90 minutes. And the value's on the Sheffield United. So if you combine that with Tom's half-time data, then probably looking at it just without really thinking too much, I'd like to have the 0-0 in or the draw in if you could. But yeah, I think if you're talking about that's a high price, I think there's probably value in that one.
Yeah, I think if you wanted to be a bit more aggressive, you can get 7.5 on Sheffield United half-time, full-time. So again, that's with Bet Victor if you wanted to be really aggressive on that. What other bets did you have planned, Pete?
Yeah, I've got a goals bet in Watford versus Norwich. I'm going for under 2.5 goals, which I can see at 1.96 at Marathon. We talked about Norwich on the last podcast, how they look okay, but they just really struggled to score. They've only scored 4 goals in their 13 Premier League games in 2020. 0 goals since we've restarted the league here. They've only got 5 shots on target in those 4 games, and they're really struggling. 6 away goals all season, scored in only 5 of 16 away games, and only 1 away goal in 2020. They're just really struggling. This is a huge game for Watford, must win, and I expect it to be a bit tight because they're probably not going to go carried away against Norwich. I don't think it's going to score. Watford haven't been free scoring themselves, 14 goals scored in the last 13 games. So these next 3 games are pivotal for them because I think they finish with City at home, Arsenal away. And they need some wins here. And I just think a tight game, Watford nicking a 1-0. The only sort of thing against that is Norwich are definitely down now. I mean, they showed nothing really against Brighton. And you wonder whether they change something and they really come out and try and actually, right, we need to start scoring goals. Let's get some confidence going. But I think under 2.5 goals, anything above 1.9 in this game, teams who are struggling to score, looks a good bet for me.
Okay. Tom, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very, very solid case. Yeah, the only thing I would be worried about is if Norwich do kind of come out and decide to actually have a go. But there's been no evidence that they've been doing that. And I think that a lot of these Norwich players have probably got moves lined up this summer. What's in it for them, really? And Pearson, he'll take a 1-0 here all day long, won't he? So I just think, I think this could be one low goals in the first half again. I'm not sure on the price, so if you could get under one Asian goal line in the first half, something like that, that might be something to look at. But yeah, completely agree. I think anything, I would have expected this to be about 1.87, and you're getting nearly 1.95? Did you say something?
Yeah,
I think it's 1.96 with Marathon.
Come in from, it was odds against a couple of days ago, I think. But yeah, I like the price still.
Yeah, it looks like the price is coming in because the next best is probably 1.91 with Betfred. I think if you look at both teams' games against other bottom 6 teams in the last, say, 20, I think there's been more than half that have been unders. That kind of supports what Pete's saying. Sounds like that price is about right, or a touch of value. I think both teams average together average just under 2.5 goals per game. If Watford are winning 1-0 and it's late in the game, they're not going to be going for another goal because 3 points is vital to them. They absolutely need these 3 points. If they don't get 3 points here, they're in big trouble because Villa and Bournemouth have been shocking, but they're still only 1 point behind them. Brighton, they're not going to catch them now. Brighton is 7 points ahead of them. West Ham, 3 points ahead of them. So they really need to get a win here to pull out of it. And it might see them being a little more cagey than usual. So we got goals there unders there in the Watford game. Any other bets this week, Pete? I think you wanted to get another relegation threatened side on board.
Yeah. I've got another long shot. I'm going back to the well with Bournemouth. Come on, Bournemouth.
Yes, Pete had Bournemouth last week at 21-1, and obviously
after
they go 1-0 up.
I couldn't believe it, but it didn't last. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, Bournemouth are already down as far as I'm concerned. If you look at their running fixtures, they're playing all the hard teams. I think they've got Tottenham at home, Southampton at home. They're their easiest games by far. So this is like a last chance saloon almost. They've got to come out and do something. And as I said before, Tottenham, I don't really see a coherent team. They just sort of hope Son and Kane can provide something special. And looking in just the last 13 games, 2020, Spurs are in the bottom 5 in expected goals conceded. So there's just Mourinho hasn't been able to mould the sort of Mourinho team that you get. After they play Everton, they could be bottom of that list. Hopefully they will be. But I think Bournemouth, I would have Bournemouth around 4.3 for this game. You can get 5.5 with Betfred and Marathon for Bournemouth to win. And like every game's a cup final, they've got a lot of extra rest going into the game as well. Obviously, Tottenham playing today on Monday, and the game is on Thursday, I think, whereas Bournemouth have had a lot of extra rest here. I think that could prove important. Obviously, the game means everything to them, so I really like them as a long shot 5.55.
Yeah, I had Bournemouth priced at 5.0, so 4-1, and you're getting 5.5. So I wouldn't disagree. My only worry is that I've backed them a few times this season. They're just shocking. I don't know what's happened this year, but they're a terrible team. And like you said last week, sometimes you've got to time your bets. There's that moment where everything comes together that this is when the underdog's going to strike. And I tried to persuade you against that last week against United, but they did go 1-0 up. I think Tottenham are a very different kettle of fish because as far as I'm concerned, and I've been saying this for weeks now, United are back, okay? The balance they have in their team is exceptional. And they have a manager who we don't know enough about him to know if he's going to be a great manager or a terrible manager. But what we do know is that he's not a bad manager for squad harmony. Mourinho will have phases of doing really well when he starts and then phases of doing terribly. He's not the best at picking a team up when they've had a bad result. His tactical masterclasses that he's built careers on are becoming less and less every season. Yeah, I think I like this. I don't think Harry Kane is firing on all cylinders. There's a few problems contractually with a few Spurs players. They don't really have much to play for. Bournemouth have got it all to play for. What do you reckon, Tom?
Yeah, well, just a quick. This isn't one I've looked into. Bournemouth at home here or away?
Home.
Yeah, good bet then. They're used to that kind of pitch, and I just think that Spurs
are they not playing on grass?
It's a tight pitch, is the old Dean Court. So I'm pretty sure Spurs is one of the bigger ones in the Prem as well. So be interesting to see. But I think that if anyone's going to put a case against Spurs, then I'm all ears, because Mourinho, I'm just not having him at all. What were they thinking about getting him in? What is that about? Why would you get rid of Pochettino and get Mourinho in? Something that's baffled me all season. But
you say that, Tom, but they are in a much stronger league position now than they were.
Would that have happened anyway?
Yeah.
100%. And yeah, you look at, it's a similar thing that's happened at Arsenal. Like, they've had a change in manager. They've gone up a bit, but the data's still the same, and it's just as bad at Spurs. And yeah, it just seems like there's a bit of disharmony, and really it is but I don't think Bournemouth are 100% down yet. I think that they need to win this, so I'd be more than inclined to back them at 5.5. I thought when you were saying that they'd be away from home.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, home advantage, how much does it play a part? I think it does in terms of pitches and stuff like that. And I do think that Bournemouth, they've been so bad defensively, but they've not made up for it going forward, which has been a real problem, because they have always been pretty suspect at the back, but usually being very proficient going forward. I think David Brooks might be back these days now, and he'll be a big player. So, yeah, I think that at the price play, they've got to be worth a couple of quid of Bournemouth here, just because at Tottenham, yeah, I'm not having them at all.
Well, it'll be only their fifth win at Dean Court if they get 3 points here. So, you say that home advantage helps a team like Bournemouth because their pitch dimensions are quite a lot smaller than the average. They're third bottom when it comes to their home record. Not saying this just to be antagonistic, because I like the bet, but it's one of those where you want to get Bournemouth on side. You think about Joshua King, great at going past players, has got a bit of end product. Callum Wilson seems to have these runs of form, but never carries them on. The one thing that I always go back to that worries me about Bournemouth, I look at their defenders, and apart from Nathan Ake, every single defender, I think, championship player, championship player, championship player. And let's be real here, Harry Kane, one of the best number 9s in the world. Son is an incredible player. Lucas Moura, in my opinion, very underrated. Lamela, in my opinion, underrated. So my worry is that Tottenham are just going to have too much going forward. What would be your thoughts on that, Pete?
Well, but then why do the Tottenham never do that in any other games then? Like at some point, if you're talking about Bournemouth are what they are, then Tottenham are what they are as well. I think the thing about Bournemouth, certainly until last season, they're always good, terrible at the back, but they could score goals. And I think there was a point where the manager went, we need to sort this out at the back. So they tried to change something to help the defence. They've helped the defence a bit, but they've lost more than what they've gained in the attack, where they don't score any goals anymore. So I reckon there was probably a real decision made there, and it just hasn't gone right. That's
okay.
Also, just if I can just chime in, you say that Bournemouth have only won 5 games at home this season. How many games have Spurs won?
Away from home?
Yeah.
Spurs have only won 3 away from home. Yeah. They've drawn 6 and lost 7. Scored 21, conceded 28.
That's a shambles. This is why a lot of my money in the Premier League has come from backing against Spurs and Arsenal away from home, because they're always priced shambolically in my eyes. And you think about, if you said that to anyone, I guarantee they'd have said probably about 7, 8 minimum.
Yeah.
Three wins away from home all season.
Yeah, the only teams that have won less away from home are Watford, Villa and Norwich, who incidentally are, 17th, 19th and 20th. So it's Spurs are 13th in the away table. So yeah, they're not a team that you want to back heavily odds on. So it sounds like we're all in agreement. I've tried to paint the picture for the listeners. I've tried to give some balance. I think Tom sounds like there might be some anti-Mourinho deep down in there that's driving this. Pete, as a Chelsea fan, still probably has some time for Mourinho. I don't have a passionate opinion on Mourinho either way, but it sounds like all three of us are on the Bournemouth win here. Pete, what's your stake in? Is it a full point?
No, it's about half a point at 5.5. I think, was it to win? I think you win 2.5. I can't do the
Well,
maths.
to be fair, our half a point is probably worth about 5 points for most of the people on Twitter, right? So for anyone joining us for the first time, our staking system is very much a point. Almost everything is a point. When it comes to longer shots, we might go half a point. Something we're very confident on, 2 points. So for Pete to say half a point, that's a pretty confident selection there. Tom, anything else for you this weekend?
Yeah, just one more in the Premier League, which is really like we've got to kind of wait and see what happens tonight with the Everton game, I guess. But over 2.5 goals in Everton Southampton's 10-11 with Bet365, and I make that a good bet because mainly from the data, I've got to say, if you look at Everton under Ancelotti, they're averaging around 2 expected goals per game, which is really strong. But their games, just in general, are seeing an XG of 3 per game. And Southampton, on the other hand, their games are seeing an average XG of 3.2 per game. So I'd have expected this line to be 2.75. So I'm surprised you can get a flat 2.5 and it's a pick'em in that market. So I was just drawn to the overs, and you've got to think here, two teams with not that much to play. I don't think Everton, unless they get a good result tonight, will be in with a chance of Europe. I've got to kind of question how much teams outside the top 4 really want a Europa League place. I don't think it's that important for a lot of them. So I'm not taking that as anything really. And yeah, if Richarlison's back, which he should be, got 2 strikers there in Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison, who I'm really impressed by this season. Both young, both only going to get better. And I've never been convinced really with Everton at the back. I know they did get a clean sheet against Norwich recently, but that is Norwich who are struggling to score goals. And people like Michael Keane just don't really fill me with too much confidence. And I'm looking at a Southampton side that I actually backed them, I think it was October time, for a top half finish at a decent price, just because their data was actually quite good even back then. And it's kind of reverted to the mean in that case. So they're in with a shout of getting the top half and totally deserve it. They did have a few injuries near the start of the season. They're all coming back now. Massive fan of Hassan Hüttel. Gave him a new contract, which is a very clever move. If they can do a bit more in the transfer market this season, I might back them for a top 6 finish next season, because I'm really liking what I'm seeing from them. I think they'll score, but I think this might have been priced up a bit on how they did against Manchester City, where they were very defensive. Obviously, when they did take the lead, but that's against Man City. It's an outlier for me. They're never going to be that defensive against teams who aren't as dominant as Man City. So, yeah, I think that both teams will score here. I think that's not a bad bet, but over 2.5 goals at 1.91, I think it was, maybe a touch big in some places. Looks a really good bet. I expected this to be a 2.75 line. So, yeah, I made this a decent selection.
Are you, just to check, are you betting on there being 3 or more goals in the game, or 3 or more expected goals in the game?
I thought we were all XG fans, Parris, but yeah.
I'm fucking with you. I think it's a bet I completely support, and I'll tell you why. Both teams don't need a result. Both teams have no reason to sit on a draw and be cagey if it's 1-1 after 70 minutes. I think Ancelotti, I wrote about this, Ancelotti has had Everton going from around 1.3 expected goals scored per game to 1.75. That's an astonishing increase. Admittedly, goals conceded has gone down as well, but Everton's expected goals this season per game, so the amount of goals they should score plus the amount of goals they should concede, is about 2.75. But since Ancelotti took over, it's over 3. And I don't think that's factored into the price as much. Southampton's is about 3 across the season anyway. So yeah, I'm on board with this. Over 2.5 goals, getting close to even money. It's a bet I very much like. What about you, Pete?
Yeah, I have overs as a slight value. I'm sort of monitoring it. It's right. It's not quite a bet for me yet, but yeah, it's right on the line. But I like it. Yeah.
Anything else you like this week, Pete?
No, I think that was it. That was the bets I've got. West Ham looked a bit short, but I'm not sure because they got the motivation. I'm not sure about that game. I'll keep looking at that. But that was it. Yeah.
I've got no doubt Tom will have at least something else. I mean, the amount of bets this guy churns out.
Well, I couldn't dismiss this one on Tuesday night. We're going to go to Italy. Both teams to score an over 2.5 goals in the Lecce versus Lazio game is an even money shot with Sky Bet. I make that a bit shorter.
That price will last about 3 minutes after this podcast gets published.
Yeah, I've got on already, don't worry. So Lecce, just to give some context, Lecce are in a relegation battle. The third bottom at the minute. I think Genoa are 2 points above them. So they've got everything to play for. They need the points. Lazio, it looks like the title effort has gone, but it's been a brilliant season for them. They've got Ciro Immobile and Caicedo back for this game, 2 main strikers, which is big. And if you just look at the data of these two, Lecce have scored in 80% of the games this season, and they're third bottom. They've actually only kept 7% of their games have seen clean sheets for them. So they're terrible at the back, but they are decent going forward.
They've scored more than Verona, who are 8th.
Precisely, yeah. So that's something that I wasn't aware of. But yeah, great shout. And I think they're averaging around 1.4 goals per game, which is in tow with their expected goals as well. I had a look into that. So they're not doing it by a fluke at all. And if you look at Lazio, they have been up there, but defensively, I've been not very impressed with them. They've only kept 14% of the games clean sheets this season, and they've been going for the title, which is bizarre. Having said that, they've scored in 93% of the games, so really good going forward. If you take the combined averages of these, I mean, both teams to scores hitting 76%. Overs is hitting 73%. So combine them both and you get even money. I think that's...
Well, never mind over 2.5. Over 3.5's landed in, I think, 6 of Lecce's last 10. Lazio are pretty decent for over 3.5 as well. But if we look at over 2.5, which is the bet you're going for, in the last 20 games for each team, I think it's landed 16 times for Lecce and 15 for Lazio, which is incredible. Yeah, I think this is a bet that I'm absolutely on board with. Lazio, they're not going to win the league now, and that's the only thing that worries me. Lecce have a lot more to play for. But actually, that could help this bet, because we can't see Lazio not scoring. We want a Lecce goal here, and yeah, I think there's not any reason why they shouldn't get one.
Yeah, I mean, I watched. We had a nap on our podcast. I napped Sassuolo to beat Lecce in over 2.5 goals. Ended 4-2. So you're seeing these kind of results with Lecce all the time. One little worry I do have is Lecce have lost 4-0 a couple of times of late. So if you're backing both teams to score on over 2.5, which is evens, it's a bit of a tricky one. I'm not sure on the price on over 2.5 straight up, but I'd be looking at a bet anything above 1.7 there. But yeah, I think both teams will score just because the defences are poor for both, and the attacks are decent. So yeah, probably
over 2.5 is 1.44.
Right. So take both teams to score on over 2.5, and you get even money. When Lazio have scored in 80% of the games, and Lazio have kept clean sheets in 14% of the games, it's worth taking that boost. It's not going to last, as you say. I make this more of a kind of 4 to 5, maybe even a bit shorter than that. So I think there's a massive amount of value in both teams to score on over 2.5 at even money. I think that's what you at.
Yeah, hopefully people aren't burnt in the same way they were with Sky Bet's pricing on one of the Atalanta games recently. I think both teams to score and over 2.5 was about even money in, I can't remember who they were playing, and I saw the whole of Twitter get on it. And
I was against Napoli, that one, I think.
Yeah, and did it finish 2-0?
Yeah, 2-0.
Is there something wrong with me when I take a little bit of pleasure at the whole of Twitter losing a bet?
No, we all love that sometimes.
Yeah, as long as we're not on it.
Yeah.
Any other bets, gents, for the weekend?
That's me out, I'm afraid.
What about have you had a look at the relegation markets?
I was having a look the other day because I decided that Bournemouth were down, and I was like, "Oh, can we value?" And I saw they're like 1.1 to go down because their running is just very tough, very tough. And it looks pretty. Villa's is tough as well. It looks like it's going to be Norwich, Bournemouth, Villa to me. I couldn't really see any way in the market.
Okay. Tom, you thinking the same?
Yeah, I had a look into it, and Watford are 2-1 at the minute, but I do expect them to beat Norwich, and then that price is going to go up. I think the bottom three are by far and away the worst teams in this league, and they deserve to go down.
Yeah, the thing with Villa, just they can't score. Like even against Newcastle, which game they were the better team, couldn't score. Against Liverpool, they had those breaks, and it was like the one. That's such an advantage to play Liverpool on that day compared to when the other teams played them. That was the time to get a win. They just can't score, and that's going to cost them.
I think if you do fancy Watford to beat Norwich, you can get 9-4 with Betfred for. Oh, sorry, no, that's Watford to get relegated. Yeah, so if you think Watford are going to get dragged into it, the best you're going to get is 9-4. West Ham are 10-1 to get dragged into it. A lot of that's probably priced on reputation there. Are West Ham, should they really be triple the price of Watford?
I think they got some better games to play, West Ham. I had a look. Like a lot of it was down to fixtures. Bournemouth's every game tough. I think Villa, there was maybe one game that wasn't tough. West Ham had a cut. I think they got home against Burnley. They've got another team who's not playing for anything. I think it was mainly on the fixtures left. I mean, obviously, it's so small, anything could happen. So maybe worth an outsider, but it just looks almost nailed on.
What about the top four market, Pete? Do you Chelsea are 1.4, Man United are 1.4, Leicester 1.9, Wolves 14.
I thought all of those teams are a bit short. To be honest, I don't really understand the market because Leicester to be odds on.
Huge over-rounds.
Yeah, I didn't like that market, to be honest. Wolves look too far out now. Man U looking strong. Leicester still there, though. I mean, if I had to back one team, I probably would back Leicester. But even I think their fixtures were a bit tougher. it was just, it was a tough one. That I didn't really like any angles.
Well, you're getting almost even money on Leicester, they've got a couple of point buffer over Chelsea, and they've got 3 points over United.
But they're the third favourites in a two-person market, and they're still odds on. I found it tough.
Yeah.
To be honest.
It's a mugs market, that, for me.
Yeah.
Look at that. Chelsea 1.44, did you say? Man United 1.44 and Leicester evens.
Yeah.
I mean, if
Not
you
even that. 1.4, 1.4, 1.91. So
it's a shambles, that.
So to the listeners that asked us to take a look at the top four market, I think the resounding answer is put your money elsewhere.
I think they can be good markets to look at earlier in the season.
Yeah,
like Tom was talking about with Southampton, and like, well, actually they're playing a lot better than it suggests. Maybe when Leicester was scoring all those chances, maybe the lay of Leicester sort of thing. Man U maybe going to come up, but like with 5 games to go, I'm not sure it's the place to get involved.
So then the other questions we had from the listeners was around what's a good way to not get your account restricted? Tom, you're laughing. I know you do a lot of player props. How have you found your accounts?
Diminished. It's very annoying, but I guess it's understandable in a way. If bookmakers have the ability to do that and they're free to do it, then from a business decision, if you're making money in these markets, then it's going to happen. The good thing is player props markets are becoming a bit more popular now. It was only Coral did it for a while at the start of the season. Skybet did some. But now you've got likes of BetStars or PokerStars, whatever it's called, which has been pretty good. They're allowing me a decent amount of stakes, to be honest.
I think the traders that work for BetStars are still at school, aren't they? Judging by the prices they're given on the props.
Oh, it seems like it. Yeah, I think that's based in the Isle of Man. Actually, PokerStars might be wrong. So maybe they need to have a look at the education system in the Isle of Man. But no, I found it pretty difficult. But the benefit is that more and more player props markets, people love them, and I love them. I've made quite a lot of money from them, to be honest. But yeah, my Betfair's gone. My Paddy Power's down to about a tenner a bet. My Coral's restricted to. Ladbrokes offer them as well. But yeah, I think there's a way to kind of get around it in a way. If you have a Coral account, for instance, and you're restricted on that, Ladbrokes is exactly the same as Coral now. They're both the same bookies, basically. So you can bet on the same stuff on there. Same with Betfair and Paddy Power as well.
Yeah,
so
but the only thing is, you're just delaying the problem, aren't you? Because it's going to happen again. To be honest, you're not. Anyone who thinks they can make serious money from player props long term, no chance at the moment. No chance. There's not enough liquidity.
Yeah.
All my sizable bets are Asian lines or straight 1x2, and I use the exchange. I use Smarkets. I pay for Odds Monkey, which is £15 a month or £20 a month, and by having a subscription to Odds Monkey, it means you get 0% commission at Smarkets. So given the amount I bet at Smarkets, that's value. I also had a Bet365 account, which for some reason was restricted heavily on greyhounds, horse racing and golf, but let me have whatever I wanted on football. Until I did a podcast last week under my own name, and the very next day, Bet365 changed my limits on football from £1,000 a bet to £5.67. So yeah, that's gone. So yeah, it's a problem for us all, and the market there isn't enough regulation to stop bookmakers turning customers who bet sensibly away. I don't know about you, Pete. I suppose a lot of the stuff you do is Asian lines as well.
Yeah, most of mine's in the main markets. I thought there was this thing about how you try and pretend to be a bad bettor, and you put a few quid on these weird bets. You spend a bit of time in the casino. Is that a thing? I don't know if that's a thing or not.
I think that you can get so far with that, but they're cotton on soon enough. If you if you bet a bit like a mug sometimes with accas here and there, they'll kind of see through it eventually. I have tried that, don't worry.
I think the answer to so it was Joseph Burns and Jack Fox who both asked this question in a different way, is have as many friends as you can that are mug punters and use their accounts. I mean, I probably have 45 accounts, and out of those 45, one was in my name. Actually, I've still got one in my name. I don't want to say the bookmaker. I've still got one in my name. They've took me to the cleaners recently. I've got to say, I'm so down with one particular bookmaker. It's unreal. It just seems that every bet I have with them is a loser. I don't know why. Obviously, they've got fantastic traders who are putting best price on a lot of markets that I think, okay, there's value there. The egg's on my face. How are you gents going to spend your kind of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? Will you be watching all the games?
Yeah, probably. Not much else to do at the moment, is there?
Yeah, I'll watch one or two, but it's a hectic time. I think I might go for a walk tomorrow, a long walk somewhere.
You say that as if you've been sitting indoors watching all the football.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've watched an obscene amount of games. I can't get a booking at my local pub. So I've got two pubs that I absolutely love in Balham. There's the Firefly, phenomenal place, Thai food, craft beer. But I don't want to be the usual Paris, which is go in there, demand this game on this screen, this game on this screen, and I sit in the perfect position because they're doing less covers than it is. They're more concerned about hygiene, rightly so. I don't want to be the knob that goes in there and dictates. And the other good pub, the King's Head, they're not taking any bookings at all. So
Tough.
Move out of London, mate.
Yeah. With the rent prices and the house prices, what they are outside of London, maybe I need to. Maybe we should be living in Austria with Pete.
It's quite expensive out here as well, to be fair.
I mean, to live in with that sort of scenery.
It's a nice backdrop to wake up to.
It is. Okay, so just to recap the bets, we've gone for Leicester to win outright. We've gone Liverpool 0-0 half time. Chelsea and under 4.5 goals. Sheffield United to be winning at half time. Under 2.5 goals in Watford Norwich. Bournemouth to win, and over 2.5 goals in Everton Southampton. And we've gone a bit continental. Lecce versus Lazio, over 2.5 goals, and both teams to score. Thanks so much for listening, watching, everyone. If you've got any feedback, please give it to us. We'll probably do one either at the end of this week for the weekend's games or next week, depending on feedback. Like I say, we've never done this in visual format before. Gents, it's been lovely to have a glass of wine and a beer and chat football with you. Thanks very much for joining us.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.
And to anyone who has stayed till the very end, if you want to check us out on Twitter, you can find us at @SaveThePunter. And we've got a website, www.savethepunter.com. So we tweet out plenty of free selections throughout the month. Last month, I think we were running at a 35% return on investment. So please keep an eye on the Twitter page. Tell your friends. Any questions, feel free to give us a tweet or a DM. Cheers.